In this video, we'll show you how to change the struts on your Ford F-150. You can find them on CarParts.com via the link in the description. For safety reasons, we strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Ford F-150 safely. From the engine compartment, using a flathead screwdriver, remove the ABS sensor connectors. Then use a fork to unclip all the clips that hold the ABS sensor cable in place. Using a ratchet and an 8mm socket, unscrew the bolt holding the ABS sensor cable bracket. You can now move the cable aside. Unclip the vacuum lines from the brake hose retainer. Disconnect the vacuum lines. Using a ratchet and a 10mm socket, unscrew the bolt securing the brake hose bracket. Then move the bracket aside. Now you need to remove the brake system. Tip: attach a piece of electrical cable or a hook to the subframe. Using a socket wrench and a 21mm socket, unscrew the two holding screws on the caliper mount. Remove the caliper assembly and hang it on the hook. Then remove the disc. Using pliers, remove the nut cover from the wheel hub. Then, locking the wheel hub rotation with a crowbar, unscrew the wheel hub nut using a ratchet and a 15mm socket. Hit the CV axle with a hammer and a pin punch to release it from the wheel hub. Now you need to support the upper control arm with a jack to make it easier to unscrew the sway bar end link and the strut foot. Using an 18mm wrench, unscrew the upper retaining nut on the link. Hold the link using an 18mm wrench. Brush the two strut foot nuts, then spray them with penetrating oil. Then unscrew them using a ratchet and an 18mm socket. Remove the jack. Brush the upper control arm ball joint retainer nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Using an 18mm wrench, loosen the upper control arm ball joint nut and unscrew it a few threads. Use a ratchet and an 8mm socket to keep the ball joint from rotating. Then hit the wheel knuckle with a hammer to disengage the ball joint. Brush the outer tie rod holding nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Using a 21mm wrench, loosen the outer tie rod holding nut. Use a ratchet and a 10mm socket to keep the ball joint from rotating. Tap on the knuckle to release the ball joint. Finish unscrewing the nut. Then remove the outer tie rod. Complete the removal of the upper control arm ball joint nut. If necessary, pry with a crowbar to facilitate handling. Then remove the ball joint from the wheel knuckle. Tilt the wheel knuckle to remove the CV axle. Protect the CV axle insertion slot near the contact portion between the hub and the vacuum hub actuator. For great content, our best price, and fast shipping, download the CarParts.com app now. Brush the three nuts holding the strut mount bearing and spray them with penetrating oil. From the engine compartment, use a ratchet, an extender, and a 17mm socket to unscrew the first two nuts that hold the strut mount bearings in place. Unscrew the third nut without removing it completely. Press the lower control arm to create the space needed to remove the strut foot. Finish unscrewing the third nut that holds the strut mount bearing in place. You can now extract the strut. You can order the struts used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Take your new strut. Insert the strut starting from the top part. Then, loosely screw a nut back on so that there is enough slack for the next operations. Reinsert the strut foot retaining bolts by hand until they make contact. Using a wire brush, scrub the knuckle of the wheel knuckle. Then apply silicone grease to the flat part that will be in contact with the upper control arm ball joint sleeve. Remove the paper towel. Take the wheel knuckle and, while inserting the CV axle into the knuckle, insert the sway bar end link. Roughly put the hub nut back in place. Use the jack to lift the wheel knuckle assembly to allow you to replace the two strut foot bolts and the upper control arm ball joint in their respective positions. Loosely screw the nut of the upper control arm ball joint back on. Then, use a jack to lift the wheel knuckle in order to retighten the nut that holds the upper control arm ball joint in place. Put the sway bar end link top nut back in place. Next, screw it back in until it makes contact. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Screw the strut foot nuts back on until they make contact using a ratchet and an 18mm socket and an 18mm wrench to prevent the bolt from rotating. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Screw the three nuts that hold the mounts back on until there is contact. Tighten the nuts with a torque wrench. Remove the jack. Using a wire brush, scrub the knuckle of the wheel knuckle. Then apply silicone grease to the flat part that will be in contact with the sleeve of the outer tie rod. Put the outer tie rod back in place in the knuckle. Screw the nut back on until it makes contact. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Complete the tightening of the upper control arm ball joint with a torque wrench. Next, blocking the hub rotation with a crowbar, screw the hub nut back on until it makes contact. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Put the cover back on the nut. Use a plastic mallet to fit it into place. Reinstall the brake disc. You can now reinstall the caliper assembly. Then screw the bolts back on. Finish the tightening of the bolts with a torque wrench. Don't forget to remove the hook that you used to hold the caliper assembly together. Put the brake hose back in place. Then screw the mounting bracket back on. Reconnect the vacuum lines. Reclip the vacuum lines to the brake hose bracket. Put the ABS sensor cable back in place. Then screw the mounting bracket back on. Replace the ABS sensor cable in its slots. Plug the electrical connector back in. Then you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle. Put the car back on the ground and block the wheels properly. Operation complete.
Quality parts, priced right, CarParts.com.